On today's episode, New York-based designer Nick Pattison, who has worked with some of the best designers in the world, is going to give us a deep dive case study into one of his recent branding projects. It's going to be amazing. Let's dive into it. Hey Nick, what's up? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming in.
Nice to meet you, Ron. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So before we go dive into the project that you want to share with us, can you share a little bit of words about yourself, just kind of a quick bio so people know who you are?
Sure. Absolutely. I have been a designer for about 18 years. I started my career at Pentagram, working with Paula Scher and Michael Garricky. I left there to work for Milton Glaser, who did the iconic I Heart New York logo, Brooklyn Brewery brand. I was there for about 5 years. I have a classical design training, mostly focused on branding. But since working at both of those places, I've also built a few software startups of my own and been a creative director for a startup incubator with about 30 startups. So I have like this branding background, but then also a digital background in app design and web design. And I currently run a design studio called Primary, where we focus solely on branding and digital.
Fantastic. So you've, for people who don't know the names that you have just mentioned, these are my design idols and like the biggest names in the design, I think, history throughout the last maybe 20, 30 years. So fantastic masters to learn from and build your experience. And it really shows in the work that you're doing now. So why don't you share your screen and let's dive deep into the project that you're sharing with us today.
Let's do it. Wonderful. I'll just share a little bit about what this project is. So this is called Stellar. Stellar is a new platform that helps businesses discover and hire the best creative professionals in the world. And it is a startup that I have created with my business partner, Aaron Ralston, and it will be launching actually this week. And basically, the problem that we are trying to solve is one that we have as creatives, or I've experienced for the last 18 years, especially working as a freelancer, which is that pretty much all of my work comes word of mouth. And that seems like a pretty antiquated way to get work in this day and age, especially with the tools we have online. So we are creating a place where there's a highly curated group of creatives, be it designers or developers, copywriters, photographers, strategists, can come together, build their own creative profiles, and be found by businesses who are looking for freelance creatives. I think that our secret sauce is really all about bringing really talented creatives in one place and creating a platform that's really highly filterable. So the core of it is a business comes to the platform and says, I want to find a web developer who's experienced in Webflow for $15,000 to $20,000, who can start in a week and easily be able to choose from 3 amazing Webflow developers. So that's the core of what this project is about.
Very cool.
So when we first start off with any client, even if it's ourselves, and I'll just add, like, being your own client, as every designer knows, is like probably the hardest thing in the world. Building your own portfolio website is every designer's nightmare. So like this process can be a little more difficult when you're the client. But in this case, the client is me and my business partner, Aaron. So we should just keep that in mind as we go through this process. So we are the people who are answering these initial strategy questions. First of all, like, who is this for? It's a two-sided marketplace. There are businesses and there are creatives. So the businesses could be individual entrepreneurs, startups, but also design studios and agencies who are looking for freelance talent. And on the other side are creatives. So that could be the designers, developers, copywriters, strategists, et cetera, who are looking for that work. So that's really who we're speaking to as we think about this logo and brand identity that we're building. We need to serve both of these communities equally. Another important thing to do early in our process is to uncover the problem and the solution. So First, let's address the business. The business problem is that finding reliable and talented creative professionals for freelance projects is hard. And so we offer the solution of a platform to easily find them and hire them. On the other side, the creatives have this problem where they don't have a single pathway to find reliable, interesting, and well-paying freelance projects. They might be able to find some here and there through some methods, but like, let's create a single pathway for them to reliably do that. So our solution is that we help you build a creative profile that gets seen by serious businesses looking for your very specific expertise, style, interest, and pricing. And that specificity is the core of our product. Like, you can search by expertise. You can even search by style. I want a Webflow developer who develops in a minimal style or a bold and playful style. And you can even filter by interests like healthcare, fintech, etc. A little more of what we do with brands early in this process is pull out some keywords like, what are the things that define you as a brand? So for us, this tool is a couple of things. One, it's kind of magical, right? If it works how we want it to. But it's also very organized and easy. It's a collaborative tool. It's social in the sense that we're looking to bring the design community together. This isn't just to find and discover work. It's also a place where hopefully you can collaborate with other creatives and meet other people and form a true community. We also do a little bit of a competitive analysis. In this case, our variables on the axes are high-end versus ordinary work and curated versus uncurated. And we try to stand in the upper right corner here, which is like a really curated marketplace filled with really talented people. That's what people will think of when they think of Stellar. And it's important for us to know that as we build the brand, we think about what's the look and feel of all of this. I'm sure many of us have seen this, but a little bit of personality sliders. Where do we stand here? Are we elite versus mass appeal, serious versus playful? Ultimately, we are kind of on the elite side. We are a little, I think, a bit serious because we're about helping you find work. We're somewhere in the middle of conventional and rebel, and we are an authority more than a friend. And young and innovative is what we strive to be, this sort of new, cool place to go.
Can I cut you off with a question about these personality sliders? Just because personally, I haven't been using them in my branding projects. And I wonder, is this kind of a template that you would use for any branding project, or have you customized this for this specific project? Is this kind of a known framework that I'm just not using?
I think it's pretty much a known framework. I tend to use it for a lot of projects. I don't put a ton of weight into it. I think it's a good exercise to just sort of get a feel for.
And you always use these same parameters, or you change them based on the project?
These are typically the parameters that I do.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, it does look very useful.
Yeah. Great. So now we've sort of set the stage. Who is this company? What are they doing? What are the problems? Let's do some mood boarding. So keeping in mind who the client is, we have Aaron, my business partner on one side, really talented web developer. And then we have me more on the branding side. We have different aesthetics, although I think in general, our aesthetic is like very clean and refined. His is really informed by this. He's like incredibly good at using the grid, really clean typography, and brought to the table some inspiration around Opal Camera, which we're both very impressed by, which is a very black and white identity, sort of Swiss fonts and approach. And some other things we were inspired by here with Opal. The identity is mostly black and white, but in the upper left-hand corner, they use this gray and then they use a pop of color, like a single color throughout the identity, which we really liked that idea. The name is Stellar, Stellar evoking the universe, and black, like black just comes to mind. So what can we pair with that? We like the idea of a bright sort of neon value. The purple and the neon line here really stood out to us. On the other side, what I had in my mind when we first started to think about Stellar was sort of like magical stellar universe, right, of gradients and stuff like that. So this was a second route that we took in terms of our early inspiration. And these two things can work together, but these were our first early thoughts. Great. So we've set the stage with our strategy, our mood boarding, all of that. Let's get into our logos. So we always start with logos. Helps set the stage for some of this work. So initial explorations that we went through, of course, were stars. That was sort of our first thought. And while we liked these, they felt like maybe a little too obvious or simple. So let's keep pushing it a little bit further. How do we take that idea of stars and maybe combine it with another idea? I think that's like a key to a good logo, is bringing two ideas together into something new. So part of what we were thinking, oh, sorry.
No, I want to cut you off with questions, interesting questions. Do you immediately start with digitized versions of your logos? Do you have a kind of a manual sketching process?
I wish I did. Working for Milton Glaser, he didn't use a computer at all. He just drew. So I should have learned that. It should have been ingrained. And I know.
No, it's okay. Don't apologize. Just want to know how you're working.
I just know that that's a good way to start, right? You want to start loose. As time has gone on, I actually find that I'm.
And what is your favorite tool of the trade? Are you using Illustrator for this?
We've moved into Figma within the last year. This is all Figma.
Do you find that it's easy to actually do these kind of patterns and stuff like that in Figma as well?
We do, yeah. I've really, I mean, it's a bit of a learning curve, right, to move from Illustrator to Figma, but it's actually way more powerful. And there's interesting tools in Figma that we've been using now where you can put together a component and move it around and create a multitude of patterns. So you can actually create logos from components. There's a lot of power in Figma.
Cool, very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, these are based on the star, but this also incorporates the idea of an eye, right, for creatives. So we quite like these, but again, perhaps we've seen them before, maybe a little bit obvious. Let's keep digging. All right, so still leaning into the universe, the stellar thing. What are we? We're a place for creatives to gather and come together, but also to discover the best. So could we use dots as a graphic form to represent this group of creatives coming together? These were cool. We dug them, but again, as they got smaller, they felt a little too finicky, not enough solid form.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
It looks like with the way that you're presenting things that maybe you are exploring kind of like visual concepts, and maybe that's just my interpretation. So first one was icons, and then it was kind of like circular duplications, and then it was circles, like dots. So is that kind of like really how you work, and it happens step by step, or you're just grouping these exploration when you're showing it to us, but that's not the way that you've created them?
I would say it's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, generally speaking. Generally speaking, it's somewhere in the middle. The process is a little bit more messy than this, but we're always starting from a concept, right? So I think that we're leaning into these directions. There are probably like 20 other versions of this right here that didn't hit. And then sometimes one of those directions might spark another idea, and you move into something completely different, and then that sparks an idea. So the initial Figma board is certainly less organized than this, but I do think that we tend to think conceptually like this as we come up with each idea.
Interesting.
So then we started to think about this sort of solar system concept, planets. This is where it started to feel really interesting and different. It really had a different vibe. The lower left-hand one felt very interesting to us, particularly because it's so graphic. It's just a circle interrupted by a line, and the reverse of the light and the dark really creates a shooting star past the moon. And we were like, okay, this is interesting. And once we hit a moment like that where we're really excited, we start applying typefaces and seeing if it will actually work. So working with some modern sans serifs, even incorporating a little bit of a pixelated style and a couple serifs just to see. And really landed here with PP New Montreal, which is similar to Helvetica, but more modern, made by Pangram. Super clean, and also functional, right? We're thinking about this application, and when people come to it, it needs to be clean, it needs to be easily filterable. How can we have a functional typeface that can work throughout the application as well? And the strokes of this are also very clean and linear, sort of like the mark. So we like to figure out what that relationship is as well. So we were excited. And for a week, we were like, yes, we got this. And then we started to apply it to the website and other things. And we realized on a transparency, this is terrible. It does not read at all. And we really wanted that. We wanted to be able to utilize this on transparencies and on imagery. So that was a problem. And the second thing is that it felt very static. Something about it, even though there's movement here, just didn't have the energy that we quite wanted. So we said, okay, back to the drawing board. What can we do? We love the shooting star concept from that. How can we dive into that? So we started with like literal stars and comets on the left. And then this third one sparked an idea, like, what if we take a graphic form that's just a square? Okay, that's pretty interesting. And we broke it up a little bit and realized, okay, this is interesting. Now you have these squares, which could actually represent this group of creatives, making up one entity of this single shooting star. Has multiple meanings, has a deeper meaning for the platform, but it's also abstract, and it feels like something you haven't seen before, which is something that we really look out for when we are building a logo or a brand. Like, let's be surprising. We said, yes, this has got to be the mark. It really just felt right. And when you know, that's true for client projects too. I think you have to go through that messy process and really dig. And typically when you're excited and when you're excited to show a project either to your business partner or to a client, you're probably on the right track. So we felt quite confident in this. And that was the mark. So that was the first part, which was to develop the mark. And the second part is to build the brand identity. When we build brand identities, we do two directions. I used to do three, but then I found that the third one, I was always just like making something up just to do it, and that two was the magic number. So we always do two brand identities, and they're based on the core principles of the positioning we did earlier, the logo work, all of that. But we make sure that they're both conceptually a little bit different and visually different to present to the client, but that they're both strong on their own. They're equally as good. So conceptually, this first one was based on the idea of rising stars. We've got our mark. And we're pulling a little bit from that initial mood board that we saw, right? So we're using black and white as a core principle, but we're pulling in that gray, kind of like how Opal did, and then adding this other value. So they had purple, but we thought this bright line was really interesting and kind of weird and wacky and stellar in a way. And the first thing that we did here, which is what we do for any client, is what is our primary application, right? If we're a bakery, maybe it's packaging, bread packaging or something like that. And we'll start thinking about what's the true application of the logo and these colors and like, how does that work? But here it's the platform. We have to think about how does this all functionally come together? So we knew that we wanted to use New Montreal as this functional typeface that could work everywhere, from the logo all the way down to H1s, H2s, body copy even. And the other thing that was informing this was that we're going to have all these creatives and we're all going to have different photos. So they're going to send in different photos and they were all going to look different. Let's make them black and white is what we decided, to create a uniformity of the brand. So that was also driving this, right? Like you have this very black and white page of creatives That's going to be a core part of this brand identity. And then how do we bring in this line to tag people as superstars or rising stars, which is some of the verbiage that we're using for some of the creatives who are shining on the platform, and then also key call outs like the login button. Now, we initially thought we would want to show profile photos for everybody, but that seemed like a hard way to gauge talent and skill. So we created this toggle for photo view and work view. That's actually going to be shown in one sec. I think that's in our other mock-up actually, but we're going to have a toggle that shows full color views of the work as well. The other application is the actual creatives page. So you have the black and white photo of the creative, and then you'll have the work below. And this is really informing our brand identity of why we're choosing black and white here, because we want the work to shine and the work is going to be colorful. So let's create a container for that, and let's not distract from the work by creating some fanciful, wild design that takes away from everybody's work. So that was part of the decision making for the black and white as well. And as we got into black and white, we really got obsessed with, does this want to be a dark mode app or a light mode app? We probably shouldn't have gotten so deep into it, but the black looked really cool. Ultimately, in going through this exercise, we found that the white was more friendly, allowed you to read the text more easily and let the work show a little more clearly. So we're leaning that way, but there might be a dark mode on the way just because it looks cool. You can see the application of all of this stuff starting to come together for the website and the landing page. Cool. Okay, so now how do we, this is something else we think about for branding projects. We want to go really deep in this process for our clients and show that we've thought about every angle. That includes the photography, but that also includes social. So here we also like to try to take the logo and break it into unique moments, right? So on the left here, we have how the logo can turn into a pattern and incorporate into the creatives, almost surround them. And in the middle, different ways to use this grid of the logo to break apart photography. And then Aaron had chosen some photography like this, which I thought was so interesting, just very like abstract imagery of lone people moving towards light or working by themselves in a way that didn't feel obvious. We did some applications. We just wanted to show this because actually the use of the line by itself in a big field wasn't working for us. But I just wanted to show, we tried it and we were like, nope, this is just a touch. Everything's black and white. And through this process, we also discovered, put the black and white imagery into the logo, and it had really high impact to talk about to the brand and our creatives on the platform. And that there was a ton of flexibility in terms of creating patterns. This is actually an animation kind of like Star Wars coming at you, where the heads are moving towards you and growing from the blackness in the back. So we have some animations that we're working on too. And then just think about posters and how these elements can all work together. So that was the first direction. And the second direction, we were very happy with the first direction. We're like, okay, this is it. But it's really important to go a different way and to really think about how we explored everything. Are we sure we've explored everything? So this one was all about, well, the first one was about rising stars. We were thinking about this concept of making the invisible visible, or bringing creatives to light. Like, the businesses don't know that you exist. And what do we do as a business is we help you as creatives come to light, like become discovered. So what can we do with that concept? So this one was based on that first initial mark of the star. And we also wanted to move away from that sort of a little more serious Swiss design into something a little more funky. Our audiences are creatives, probably like a sort of a younger audience. How can we do that? So much more colorful, brought together this beautiful gradient with the star pattern. Used sharp grotesque, which is like a little more fun and unique. got this solar grape and moon glow colors. And the use of black becomes a little bit more apparent here. Combined with the purple, it starts to work really nicely. Different kind of profile page. And we're playing with some of the elements here as well. And the element, everything's very square. The profile photos are square, for example. So could this identity be based a little bit more on rounded edges and like a card sort of style for the application? Again, playing with light mode and dark mode, can't decide, still working through that problem. And then thinking about the website, just like, okay, if this is not going to be as imagery driven as the other one, what drives the visual language? And here it's a lot of the pattern work with a little bit of a gradient and a dither. And then also thinking about other things like how can we treat the creatives differently here, just to explore that. So we put them on this light purple background, used color photography, sort of diametrically opposing this visual look to the black and white look of everything else on the other direction. And we started to incorporate these sort of funky, fun shapes. I'm thinking about social here as well, bringing the shapes into the compositions, bringing these gradients again with on the image on the left is like he's coming to light, and I can see animations here of like sort of this invisible gradient with creatives sort of coming out of it. Started to push a little bit more into this idea of shapes. Could we have some fun, funky shapes that give us some energy? And this is where it really started to feel cool to me. This use of the gradient, a slight glow, and the idea of different forms of creatives where you're bringing the mark together with these other shapes to tell its story. A little more expression of that. I can see this being an animation where people's faces are popping up and shapes are changing. And then an interesting way to treat the typography that feels totally different from that other direction, where the shapes become incorporated into the typography itself. And that's it. So that was direction 2, you know, very purposefully moving into something that feels different, but we were so sure of direction 1, and then we did direction 2, and I showed it to Aaron, and he was like, wait, do we need to do direction 2? What are we doing? And so that's honestly what we hope for with all projects. When we show it to a client, they're really excited about one, and then they see another one, and they're like, wait, can we do both? So that kind of happened.
That is the most super common result of a good presentation. Oh, I love both. Can we do both?
It totally is. Right. So that's what happened. I mean, to a degree. So in our final designs here, we've got the stellar mark from the first one that we quite like, but we were just really into the purple, and the purple also felt very versatile for buttons on white, buttons on black, whereas that lime sort of clashed on white, wasn't as readable. So we're kind of choosing both here. We're bringing the purple in, we're bringing the moon glow in, we're using our new Montreal typeface, and you can see how these two start to come together in this final direction. We've got our work view, we're bringing in color for the work. Profile page. This is probably my favorite moment of the whole thing. I just love how these compositionally are working. But the identity is inevitably fairly black and white, and it's got these touches of purple. And really, what we're thinking about is platform first, website first. All of it's going to be very black and white. But with our marketing, we have an opportunity to push it a little further, and I'll show you where that's going. So a lot of the identity here inevitably becomes quite black and white, which we're very comfortable with a dash of purple. But I think as we get into marketing, outdoor, Instagram, other environments, we can start to push this purple a little bit more and start to be playful and see how the black and white can interact with the purple, the glows, the gradients, all of that. So this is like a composition of what our waitlist landing page will look like with that really interesting photography, the use of the purple and this very black black and white look, which we're quite happy with. And that's it. Stellar work.
Nice.
Feel free to check it out, everybody. And we're really excited about it. And we're just, we as people who've been freelancers are just really excited to build this community and be a part of it with everybody.
Fantastic breakdown, Nick. I love it. I love this. And I really love how you presented the whole thinking process, including the client considerations and everything that goes into presenting this. Fantastic. Thank you so much for covering this. Where can we tell people to find you? We'll put the link to Stellar below the video. Should people follow you on Twitter, which is where I discovered you, or somewhere else?
Twitter's great. It's Nick, NICK __ Pattison, PATTISON. You can find me on Twitter, and my studio is primary.studio.
We'll put all the links below the video. Thank you so much, my friend, and hope to see you in another video. Bye.
It's been a pleasure.